There we go. Wish I knew what the button was. Open cover. Okay, hello everybody, my name is Ose. We're just starting here on Lawfolds, and I forgot to mute my stream. Shh. Okay, we're here on Lawfolds, and I am buying some pigs. Because why not? Only $12,024, pounds. 12,240. And we have a little bit of money. There we go. Hi pigs. So, it's now day 5. I skipped through a little bit of time. It rained overnight and the crops are still wet. So we'll do what we can when we're able to. I still have the what is it? The last field of corn to harvest. I'm going to harvest at least 2 trailers worth of corn as regular to feed the pigs, and then the rest I'll be silaging up. Spent some time compacting the silage bunker, so it won't take us long to finish that off. But for now, we have some pigs to take to their new home. Surprisingly deceptive, sitting on the wrong side of a vehicle. I have ridden in an old 1960s left-hand drive Porsche 944 in the UK, and that was scary because the guy's driving down country lanes at 60 miles an hour where he's sitting closest to the curb and he can't see around the truck what's in front of us of what's coming the other way. But we made it to where we're going, so that was good. Pay attention to where the truck's going. I don't want to crash. Piggies won't be happy if we crash. Also notice there's no oilseed radish in the left-hand fields. I cultivated those in and planted barley in my 2 largest fields, I think. Huh. Doesn't let me open the tail. Oh well. Let's push the dialogue button and unload the pigs. So we now have 103 pigs. I was only expecting to have 102. Guess we got a new one in. Oh. And we now have a little message from Glance saying you've got over 100 pigs. So, pigs may need to be fed. I can turn the flashing lights off, and I should probably clean that thing at the back. Still have wet crops. Okay, that's a truck put away. What's next? I suppose I should check animal food levels, considering I just bought a bunch. Oh yeah. It is 11 o'clock. I can get away with waiting until tomorrow to feed the pigs. But we're now getting one in less than 10 hours. Huh. In that case, I might go and cultivate a field while we're waiting for the crop to dry out. Let's put the wheel in the right position and then turn around. Thinking 2 fields of canola. Can't remember what was in this one last time. still got the stuff to sell, silage. I did kind of want to wait until the last field's done so I can get an accurate read on how much I've used this year. We're doing this completely manually. I need to get the steering straightened on this tractor. Pulls to the right. Missed the corner. Yes, yeah, I've watched the stream the last 2 days. Some interesting stuff, some frustrating answers or lack of answers. But on the whole, it looks good. I like that they're getting rid of daily maintenance costs. And that you have to get your vehicles serviced, all of them serviced, not just the ones with engines in. Got about a week to wait. So what were your impressions on it? And they're getting rid of the gold nuggets. Which is kind of a good thing. I think the game where I went bankrupt, I collected the gold nuggets, I bought large equipment, and then I couldn't afford to run it because I didn't have the income coming off the fields. Doing it this way kind of makes sure that you're not outgrowing your income. Edge. Yes, that will be a good thing. So I think for early on, Giants insisted that all of the animal enclosures were separated around the map, because some systems couldn't cope with all the animals being in one place. Now later on, some of the or shortly thereafter, some of the map makers started putting all of the animals on one farm, and some of those Giants didn't approve because of the limitation with some systems couldn't cope with it. But by the end, Giants were sort of, or with the likes of old streams, you don't have an option but to put all the animals in one place, because there's nowhere else to put them. The map's so small. Yes. Also, the other nice thought is that you can start off with a bunch of small fields around a farm yard, and as you expand and you buy bigger equipment, you get to the point where, well, I can't use this big equipment on the small fields that I started with, so I can now sell those small fields and not have to worry about them. I mean, you wouldn't want to run this tractor on Old Stream Farm. It's too big. And the bigger the tractor, the worse turn radius they have. They're capable of hauling some incredible equipment, but to be frank, you can't use the incredible equipment on Old Stream because there's not enough space for it. However, they're providing us with the ability to start with a couple of very small fields. You look at the American map they demoed today, and around the farm there's 3-4 very tiny fields. And with your 120 horsepower tractor and 3 to 6 meter working width equipment, that's adequate. You're going to turn a profit, and you're going to be able to eventually afford a 200 horsepower tractor. And while that can haul larger equipment, you can't use the larger equipment on the tiny fields. It's just impractical. But you want the 200 horsepower tractor so you can move into, larger equipment for larger fields. So you might get mid-sized equipment at this point and start buying some mid-sized fields, which it's still okay on the small fields. It's just, the larger you go, the less practical it becomes. Until you reach the point of, okay, now I'm buying those really big fields and I've got a really big tractor with some really big equipment. Do I really want to keep the small stuff, or do I want to concentrate on my large fields? No, I don't. I'll sell the small fields. They're too tiny for the equipment that I now have. Or you keep them and turn them into forestry and buy some large forestry equipment as well. I mean, this map is big and has some really big fields. They're a little bit awkward at the edges of some of them because the walls and the fences and the shrub bushes are so close. But not in so much that the rest of the field doesn't benefit from having this large equipment. I could go larger on some of these fields, but then I have to keep the smaller equipment to work the smaller fields. So, contractism is a big improvement. I watched one video where someone was playing on, I think it was a map called Mustang Ranch, and it had 5 fields on it, but the fields were huge. Now you start with the smallest one, and the idea is you save up money until you can afford the larger ones. Well, this guy decided he'd do a harvesting contract on the biggest field. And it gave him a huge harvester, but he got about 70% of the way through it and ran out of diesel in the harvester. And so he had to go out and find his fuel tank and a vehicle to tow the fuel tank to the field with the harvester on it. All the while the time is ticking down on the contract. and you've only got 10 seconds off the field before you fail the contract, and he'd done 70% of it. It'd taken him a couple of hours. And so he managed with 10-second bursts to haul this tractor down to the gas station, fill the fuel tank up with fuel, get the fuel tank to the field where the harvester was, at which point he didn't suffer a countdown penalty, because at that point the tractor with the fuel tank was on the field, and so you have to stay within the bounds of the field of the contract, and managed to refuel the harvester and finish the job. But very frustrating. So the fact that you can now do a contract and then, I need to take care of something on my farm, I've got to go and feed the animals, I've got to set a worker off on one of my fields while I'm doing this contract, that's a great thing. And for the contracts, the equipment comes empty. So if the contract is to plant a field, the planter comes empty. You've got to supply the seed. So if you've got a big field with a planter that doesn't have the capacity to hold seed for the entire field, you're going to need to figure out how to resupply it. And it's something you can do now. And you've got to empty the harvester when you fill it up. I don't know, I haven't done any harvesting contracts on this map, but basically what happens is you start harvesting and the harvester fills up quite quickly. But it's sort of every time you fill it up by 50% of what's remaining, the fill rate slows down. So you fill up the first 50% really fast, and then the next 50% of the next 50%, so 25%, fills up a little bit slower, and then the next 12.5% fills up even slower, and you get to about 90% full, and the fill rate is hardly happening. So you will always have the capacity to harvest the entire field in Farm Sim 17. Completely unrealistic. In Farm Sim 19, you're going to have to supply the harvester, or lease it, and a tractor, and a trailer. And you're going to have to harvest the field until the harvester's full, and then unload into the trailer. And when the trailer's full, you're going to have to take the product to sell point to sell, because that's what you've been contracted to do. They've changed the whole ploughing thing. I don't know that makes a big difference. You're going to need to, you're told you need to plough after harvesting beets, potatoes, corn, and I'm guessing sunflowers, although it might not be. And those are the only, there's only 4 crops that you have to plough after, and I don't know whether that's enforced or whether you're going to suffer a degraded yield if you don't. But where on Farm Sim 17 you're ploughing every 3rd harvest, on Farm Sim 19 you're putting lime down every 3rd harvest. So it's a different act, but functionally, as far as a computer program is concerned, functionally it's a similar deal. You might have noticed I'm doing this manually. doing too badly, although I think there's a fair amount of overlap. I've probably got a foot of overlap there. So I could be doing that more efficiently, but that's good enough. What does the lime do? It's a nutrient that you're adding to the soil. So what ploughing is it's a deep turning of the soil. You're digging deep and turning the deeper levels of soil over. What I'm doing at the moment is cultivating, which is just turning over the top layer of soil in order to give the plants a better growth bed. So ploughing is just I guess the nutrients sink deeper into the soil, so you're bringing that I guess less depleted soil nutrients to the surface. Yeah, you've got depleted soil on the top because that's where the crop grew, and you're trying to bring up the nutrients that are deeper in the soil for the next round of crops. But you only have to do that one every 3. Lime is just adding a nutrient to the field to make the crops grow better. And my understanding is, Farm Sim 17, you plant a crop, you will get 100% yield. If you plough, it adds 10% to the yield. If you fertilise, it will add 30% per application of fertiliser you put on the field. So 3 stages of fertiliser, you're now at a yield of 200%. I think on Farm Sim 19 it's a, if you don't do it, there will be degraded production. So if there's weeds growing on your field and you don't deal with them, they will reduce the amount of crop that you harvest. So Mr. Moose, who's a farmer in life, said that it's not what lime is used for, so I thought I got it wrong. I think lime affects the pH levels of the soil. I'm guessing it makes it less acidic, although don't quote me on that. I believe it's an alkaline base. So, and crops like a certain, level of acidity to grow well. They may grow outside of that range, but they won't grow as well as if they're kept in the ideal range. Kind of like fish. Fish like a certain level of acidity of the water, and if it gets too acidic, they'll get sick. Now, if they've lived in the water like forever, they probably aren't going to die, but they're not going to be very healthy and they're not going to live very long. Whereas if you add a brand new fish into an acidic fish tank, it's going to suffer from shock and die. It's probably fair to say it's probably getting a bit more realistic. That's what Giants do. They add small aspects of the game to make things a little bit more realistic. So we used to do ploughing, but the thing is, in real life, a lot of farmers don't plough anymore. Because there's other things you can do to improve the yield of the crops, and we've come to understand, levels of acidity affect crop growth, and so we do that instead. And in order to get someone playing the game to do that, there has to be some benefit or removal of penalty to encourage that act to take place. So, yeah, in Farm Sim 17 we have a weeder. I want to run a weeder over the grass fields a couple of times to get the yield up. But there's no weeds that you can see on the field. It just, weeding a field is just like putting down solid fertilizer or liquid fertilizer. Now in Farm Sim 19 what they've done is they've said, oh yeah, there's weeds growing on your field, and if they're tiny weeds you can take the weeder out there and you can club the weeds over the head and kill them, and that will mean that the crops now aren't competing with the weeds for the nutrients in the soil. Now if you leave the weeds too long, they're going to get bigger, and if they get bigger, the weeder ain't going to cut it. You're going to have to get some chemicals out there to kill the weeds, which is where your herbicides come in. And you kill the weeds, and now all the nutrients in the soil are good for the plant, the crop that you're trying to grow, and not good for the weeds. However, if you don't deal with the weeds, you can still harvest the crop, but what you get out of the field is going to be significantly less than if you'd taken the time out to kill the weeds before you harvest it. So, in effect what they're doing is we already have those actions, but they're causing different results in the game. It used to be you get more of the stuff you're trying to grow, and now it'll be you won't get less of the stuff that you're trying to grow. So at the moment it's a benefit. In Farm Sim 19 it's eliminating a penalty for not doing it. I kind of like that. Yeah, it's, as far as a programmer is concerned, functionally it's doing the same thing. But your observable results of your actions are slightly different, if you like. You still need to do it. That could be bad. I can get around there, and then I can get around there. Then I have room to do this. And some of the function you can turn off. So they're rather than crop destruction being a mod that you include with your save game in order to have crop destruction running, in Farm Sim 19 it's going to be a switch that you need to turn off in order to disable it. This could be a bad thing because I'm running down the middle here, and I don't know if the cultivator's wide enough to reach the edges, or I'm going to end up with two narrow strips on each side of the cultivator path. We'll see when we get to the end. It'll be a surprise. Okay. It's a little bit in the corner up here. and this field has been cultivated. Well, technically when I started streaming this, I effectively had millions in the bank when I started. However, I'd had 3 years of game time to build that money up, and the equipment I'm running and everything else. Plus, in real life, I have a philosophy: I don't borrow money. And that kind of reflects with my farm too. So I don't have a loan and I don't take out money. I have to be able to afford the equipment, and I have to be able to afford to run the farm with the money I have in the bank when I'm not making money. So, for example, let's go here. There's a bunch of effectively switches here. I can change the currency unit to euros, dollars and pounds. I can change the measuring unit from miles to kilometres. I can turn those little black and white strips on the ground on or off. I can have a radio. I don't have a radio on. That's all environment stuff. I can change the time scale. So some people will play at ×5, some days will play at ×15. I tend to play in real time unless I have really nothing to do today, and I'll be doing stuff to fill in the time until I can get to the job I need to do. Traffic on or off is a switch. Dirt, normal, fast or off or slow is a switch. Automatic engine start, stop go braking, fuel usage, helper switches, plant growth. I think it can be slow, medium, fast or off. So what some people will do is once the crop has grown, they'll turn the plant growth off so that they have enough time to harvest it all. And then once it's been harvested, they turn the crop growth speed back on fast. Plant withering can be on or off. Ploughing can be on or off. Fertilizer states can be 1 or 3. So that means that one layer of fertilizer is 90% yield improvement. That means it's only 30%, so you have to do it 3 times. These are all the games, what I would call the game switches. And so for Farm Sim 19, there's going to be another one that says crop destruction on or off. And depending what mode you're in, some of those might be locked. With seasons, what we have here is I can't alter the plant growth, and I can't alter the plant withering, and I can't alter the automatic engine start, although that might be a function of hard mode, because I have seasons and hard difficulty level turned on. So some of those things get disabled depending on what level of difficulty you're playing on, or they default. If you're playing on easy mode, plant growth is slow. If you're playing on medium difficulty, then plant growth is medium, and if you're playing on hard difficulty, plant growth is fast. So you have to get out there and you have to get out there and harvest everything really quickly, because the plants are growing quickly. It gives you less time to do the necessary tasks. So these 2 fields I'm going to plant with canola. Unfold. it's 4 fields will be planted. Actually, 5 fields will be planted. And I don't know if there's going to be hard, easy and medium difficulty levels on Farm Sim 19. That hasn't been explained. There's going to be the effectively Farm Sim 17 start, where you start with a farmyard, a couple of fields and some equipment to work it. There's going to be I think they said farm manager mode, which is basically you have a load of money, you get to pick where your farmyard's going to be and which fields you start off with. And then finally there's going to be the sort of the expert mode, where you start off with maybe a few thousand dollars, enough to buy yourself a tractor but not enough to buy yourself a farmyard, and you are then going to use that tractor to go out contracting until you've saved up enough money to buy some other equipment and maybe buy a yard to stick your equipment in. But I don't know whether within that there'll be easy, medium and hard difficulties. And as for startup, I mean, normally I am fairly happy with I'm going to accept the challenge of the map maker's given me a farmyard and a couple of fields, and I need to build, and some equipment, and I need to build up from that. When I'm playing with seasons, what the map designer has given me is generally in some ways insufficient to do what I need to do, and in other ways extravagant. You know, on this farm I started off with 3 tractors, and it's sort of, yeah, and a harvester and a load of other equipment. I think I had a beet harvester, and it's sort of, no, I don't need all of this equipment because it's going to cost me an arm and a leg to maintain. And it's going to be 9 months before I get to harvest anything, and I'm not planning on planting beets in the first year, so I don't even need that piece of equipment. The tractors you've given me are 150 horsepower or less, and frankly I need a 200 horsepower plus tractor and maybe another one. So when I started this farm, I pretty much went through and sold everything, and then bought one big tractor. I kept a small tractor. I kept the JCB actually, and I sold the harvester and the header because I didn't need them right this minute, and I sold the beet harvester equipment because I didn't need it for a couple of years, and I bought a better planter, and I bought a better I bought the AR frame equipment, so you know, a multi-roll trailer instead of a tipper trailer. I kept the tipper trailer because that's what I use to when I'm feeding the pigs, and it's tiny, 8,400 litre trailer on a farm this big. The trailers I have are 21,000 litres, which is adequate. It would nice to have bigger, and maybe I should consider about getting bigger trailers, but I could only really use them on the farm because they would be slightly unwieldy to take out on the roads. Which one's that? New Holland or the Case? Remember, New Holland and Case are still in the game. I must admit, I haven't seen much in the way of what harvesters available or are going to be available. We know the Massey Ferguson is going to be available, which should mean that there's the equivalent Fendt, because they're effectively the same manufacturer with different badges on, much like General Motors, Chevy, Saturn, Saab, Hummer were all the same manufacturer, and they made the same cars, but they just put different badges on the outside. And the green and white, the Class tractor, the Class isn't in the game. All the Class equipment I'm running on this farm are mods, and they're not available on console because they're not licensed. But yeah, this tractor is a Class tractor, and it's not available in the game. It's a mod. The harvester I'm using, same deal. It's a mod. The in-game ones, let me see if I can remember. You've got Case, you've got New Holland, you've got Massey Ferguson, you've got Fendt, although Fendt were an early Giants mod. So basically they took the Fendt harvesters, not the Fendt harvesters, they took the Massey Ferguson harvesters and made them green and put Fendt badges on the side because that's what they are. So we did have Fendt harvesters from the get-go, although they didn't come with the game. You had to download them as mods. Now I'm going to have to look up what the other, that one, the other harvester, Sampa Rosenlu is the other one, and Rostelmash, which I believe is Eastern European. Case New Holland Class. So I have a supply of Class. But yeah, those were the harvesters in game that were available, and normally we don't expect to lose the big equipment. Yeah, I think on some farms Arthur's run, what is it? The John Deere harvester. Also, not available in the game, but it is available as a mod on for PCs only. Because Giants doesn't have a license for Class equipment or John Deere equipment in Farm Sim 19. They don't say that, well, you can't go out and make that equipment, we just can't endorse it in the game because we're not licensed to. But what you do with your own, with your own tools to get stuff in the game is entirely your own thing. And if you want to share that with people, knock yourself out, but we're not going to endorse it. So that equipment is not going to appear on a console. That's why Lizard exists as a manufacturer in Farm Sim. They haven't bothered to go to talk to Mr. Ford and say, hey, can we have a Ford pickup for use in our farming game? And then Mr. Ford turns around and says, yes, pay me $1 million and you can have the likeness of a Ford pickup truck in your game. They just said, hey, there's this manufacturer called Lizard that makes pickup trucks that look suspiciously like Ford F-150s or F-250s, but don't tell Ford that, because they're Lizard pickups. Because they think it's more important to license the farming machinery so that it looks correct than they do to license road vehicles. And another thing you've got going against you in that count is, while Ford cars are produced by Ford, Ford tractors probably weren't produced by Ford at the end. They were probably bought by somebody else. New Holland, for example. I mean, Saab, when they started in the 1920s, built aeroplanes. Then they decided to build cars, and then they decided to build trucks. And then they spun off the car manufacturing. So that became an independent company that still had the Saab label, and the trucks became Scania. They all use the same badge, but they're all owned by different corporate entities. And they still make Saab aeroplanes, both military and commercial. But Saab aeroplanes at the end had nothing to do with Saab cars. However, I do think the guy that made a lot of the class mods that I use is still modding, and hopefully will be modding for Farm Sim 19. I've seen a couple of more recent mods by him, so hopefully it won't be too long before we get a selection of class tractors and harvesters in Farm Sim 19. I'll be happy. I think with Fendt they're actually including a Favorite model, which is, I believe, sort of 1980s, late 1980s era tractor, because they I think they're coming to understand that while the modern stuff is nice, and a lot of people like the modern stuff, some people want to play the game using classic vehicles. Okay, we haven't got steam tractors or traction engines or whatever you want to call them. I'm sure if someone could be bothered to mod it into the game, it could happen. But it's much like Train Sim. A lot of their releases are modern era, so post 2000, which for the UK is post nationalisation, where different regions have different liveries. However, they understand that some people like the old British Rail blue, and so some of the routes they do will be in British Rail blue, which is 1970s through to the very early 80s, when British Rail Regional came in. So you had British Rail Intercity, you had Scottish region you had Network South East. And they're all the same, effectively the same model, it's just that it's got a different paint job depending on which region it was in. And then there's another group of people who like steam trains. And so they cater for that as well. Unfortunately, I like steam trains, and my feelings are they don't do enough. Although they've started branching out and doing heritage railways, which are preservation railways, which include old diesels, new diesels, and the old steam locomotives as well. And they do them in preservation versions as opposed to original manufacture versions, if you like. And more recently in Farm Sim we've had I think it was Black Sheep Modding did a Heritage Massey Ferguson pack, which is sort of 1970s Massey Ferguson tractors. So they're only they got tiny front wheels and big back wheels, and there is no drive shaft to the front wheel. Much like the tractors I used to see when I was growing up as a kid. But now most tractors are four-wheel drive, and so the front wheels are more substantial. I missed a bit over there. I'm not very good at driving in straight lines, obviously. So what we're doing here is cultivating this crop into the ground. Oh dear. So I'm not harvesting to create a yield. What we're doing is just churning the plants into the dirt, which adds the nutrients back into the ground for the crop, for the production crop that I'm going to plant after this. And if I do that, this is the field we're working at the moment. This is oilseed radish growing. If I go to the what's that? That's cultivated, that's growing. I go to the next line, you'll see that where I've churned this into the ground, I've got an extra level of fertilization on the field. So it's kind of a free fertilization, or at least it's cheaper than the solid or liquid fertilizer, because you do not use much seed planting this stuff. I'm going to have a cough drop. Right, yes. And I believe it's a old two-wheel drive tractor. Now you can get open top tractors, mods, Actually, you can get one standard. The Platinum expansion included a Massey Ferguson, which was an open-top tractor. But there are some mods for the New Holland T4, which is a tiny tractor and doesn't have a roof, has a roll bar. And I've used that on a couple of maps where I need a small tractor just for running around in the farmyard, because it's quite cheap. You can use it for getting equipment out of the shed and putting it away, but it's not much use for ploughing on the field because it just doesn't have the power. You're only talking about 50 horsepower, 70 horsepower. But that is a four-wheel drive tractor because it's modern. I don't have it loaded on this map. I might get one for the Old Stream Farm special I'm doing this coming Sunday, because it's something different. I'm going to want a small tractor and probably a big one. There's that path up as well. Yeah, I watched the beginning of Daggerwin's survival series. But I watch a couple of YouTubers, and some of them produce daily, and so you kind of run out of time after a while. When there's some folks where this is their full-time job, and so they're producing 8 hours of streams and videos a day. I don't have the time to watch that, so I don't watch them. They might be good, but I just don't have the time. I'm kind of a little worried about Arthur's kick coming the end of this week. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Because he's planning to start streaming Farm Sim 19 on Thursday, and he's going to be. He said he wants to. Do maybe 40 minutes on, 20 minutes off, or an hour on, half an hour off. So he's got half-hour breaks between streams. But even then, I mean, he could be producing 8 hours of video in a day. I have to work. So it's not like I'm going to be able to watch it all. Now, when I started playing Farm Sim, I mean, a lot of the Lawfolds work I've done is me driving up and down a field like this with Arthur's stream on the next screen over, and I'm watching his stuff while I'm driving, while I'm farming. That's relatively easy to do. Now, I can't play World of Warships while watching someone else's stream because you need a lot of attention for World of Warships. it doesn't take a significant amount of attention driving a tractor up and down in straight lines. Well, then again, I'm not doing too well at this driving in straight lines bit kick. But now that I've started streaming, I can't have Arthur's stream running on one screen while I'm streaming on another, because I need to pay attention to this, the chat. And I know some people have expressed a lack of desire, if you like, to watch some of the official Giant streams and some of the early streams when the likes of Arthur get Farm Sim 19, because they want to experience the discoveries themselves. They don't want to, like today, the guys went up to, started off at that building with the construction site inside it. Some people want to discover that from themselves. They don't want to, yeah, well, I know it's there, so I don't need to go and see it now. If a map has a castle on it, I want to go and see the castle. I don't want to have somebody else give me a guided tour of the castle on their stream. So sometimes that comes into play. Now, Arthur also usually does tutorials, how to feed your cows, how to look after a field, what's the best crop to grow to make money, that sort of thing. And so there'll be how-to videos that he won't necessarily stream, because he wants to concentrate on providing a narrative as opposed to tracking what people are chatting about on the stream. I can understand that. I'm not doing a how-to video, but I'm perfectly happy to discuss a how-to if people have questions about it. Sure I got that right. Maybe a little strip there that I missed. And the thing is everybody's going to be doing it. You're going to have Simulate Gaming, who's one of the guys on the Giants official stream. From next week Monday, when the Giants stream goes off air, he's going to be doing his own Farm Sim 19 stuff. Virtual Farmer's going to be doing his. Daggerwind's. I mean, I don't think Daggerwind's going to hit saturation because he has other things in his life. So he's going to produce his one video a day. And that's kind of convenient. I can watch that. videos are usually 30 to 40 minutes long, so it's not that bad. When I'm faced with a 2-hour video, it's sort of, do I have 2 hours to watch this? Arthur does it quite well in that he'll stream for 4 hours and then he cuts the stream into 30-minute segments and posts one video a day. So he could stream for 4 hours in one day, and that's 8 days worth of videos he's got to upload. He's now at the point where he's uploading 2 videos a day, but that's still only an hour's worth of viewing. But if you're watching that, you don't have time necessarily to watch all his streams. Ouch. Okay, let's straighten that up. No offset. There we go. Okay, I'm going to finish this efficiently using the GPS. So yeah, you'll now notice I have sheep and pigs on the glance mod reporting over 100 animals. I did also buy some cows, but only a few because they're a little bit expensive. While I have a load of money, I don't have that much. Whoops, I drifted off course so badly there. Thought that was going wrong. And the animal purchasers will help when they get back into breeding season to get me those 2 achievements finished. So I think my broadcast plan is this will be the last Tuesday Farm Sim 17. And Thursday will be the last Thursday Farm Sim 17 productions. I undecided what I'm going to do on Friday this week, because yeah, Thursday and Friday Arthur's going to be streaming Farm Sim 19. But going forward, Saturday morning streams will be Lawfolds for the at least the near future. And then we can see where the farm ends up. I'm going to have to play into a 5th year, and I may go for completing that 5th year. It'll mean you see snow, maybe. That's an interesting question. Will you see snow? Wow. Wow. What an incredibly mild winter. At this point, no snow forecast for the entirety of winter. Oh, that's different. Normally I've had 2 to 3, 4 days of snow. First day of snow is usually the first day of winter. And that's good for destroying all of the crops. But then once that's happened, that snow usually melts off by the second day, or during the second day. But then I'll get 3 straight days of snow, and the snow will be on the ground into early spring. Usually during winter I don't do anything except feed animals. Oh yeah, well, like the real world, there is a bias for summers being very sunny, there's a bias for fall being very wet, and there's a bias for winter having snow. But it's not an absolute. It doesn't always rain practically every day of fall. I mean, some years I've had quite mild fall weather as far as the rain's concerned, so that the harvest hasn't been a problem. This year, fortunately, I had the 2 days of late summer were dry, and some of my crops were ripe enough to harvest, and that saved a lot, because we will have had 4 days of rain, and I mean this is a day of sun, but because it rained overnight, the ground is still wet and it's midday, and I have 1 field left to harvest, and I can't do that now until it's dried out. And the bad news is if the crops don't dry out in time for a harvest tonight, or it starts raining at 5 o'clock in the evening, not that it's forecast to yet, that field's never going to get harvest. That's a lost crop. The first area I did, which is up top left side, the patch of ground between field 10 right in the corner and field 8 just below it, there's actually trees there that could be harvested right now. They're not fully grown, but they're grown enough that there's wood that can be taken down. The other line of trees, which is down where this tractor was parked, you can still drive over them. They're still saplings. And obviously the field we were chopping down when I started streaming this farm, we just planted those, so they're less established than the strip of trees just down from the pig farm. And I still have where the trees at the top of that hill, I haven't touched those, so potentially I could cut them down. They're fully grown. Well, somewhat fully grown. They're not uniformly grown because they're placed by the mat maker. Trees that you plant and then grow tend to be fairly uniform in height and yield. Okay, one more pass and this field is done. I can move the cultivator back down where all the other equipment's queued up and waiting. Okay. So that field just over there is the field that had corn on, that we were running the forage harvester a couple of days ago. I have put slurry down on it, fertilised it, and seeded it with oilseed radish, which should pop in the next day. So now that field is fully or fertilised to 2 stages of fertilisation, as is that one. That block of fields there, which is 1, and that one. This one is planted with barley, that one's planted with barley. Oh, I've still got that one too. So there's 1, 2, 3. And this one's still to do. I need to plant some canola, and I'm probably going to plant another field of corn or 2. Maybe 4 and 3 corn, canola on these 2. But we won't be able to plant those until spring. So we have one more job for the cultivator, which follows the harvest. Before we can put that away till spring. So yeah, there was a row of trees just here, which I took down about 2 years ago to tide me over. There's only about 50 trees there, if that. So not a lot of money out of it, but sufficient to get me by. And drop that off. Drive over these trees because they're not trees yet. I hope I didn't mess that up. Ooh. Oh yes. And this field over here is planted with wheat and doesn't belong to me yet. But I do have a plan to buy it next year when it's ready to harvest. It needs 2 more stages of fertilisation, which I will do and get paid for doing, about £1,000 a time. That could be because Arthur sped up time. I think on one of the maps Daggerwing planted a field of trees, or one of his playthroughs Daggerwing planted a field of trees, and I think he ended up right at the end having planted the trees and done everything else on the map. He was sort of, well, I want to wind it up here, but I'd like to see the trees grow, so he sped through time. I think he ended up going through about 5 years before the trees were in any straight state to cut down, and by that point it was just a case of trees have finished growing, yay, time to move on to the next map. Then he didn't harvest any of them. I think at that point he decided, yeah, growing trees isn't in my forte, because even in a 50 episode series, that's not enough time to grow some trees. Okay, we need to switch this to canola. Drop the doodad. Turn it on. And drive up the field a little bit. And then, yes, I am going to turn on. Rotate. Yep. Slide that across. Click on that. It's going to be reversing that way. I think that's ready to drive. Now you'll notice that the seed is counting down really quickly here. Canola is a very big uses of seed, so you've got to factor that into your profits. I'm using a lot of seed to create canola. Whereas soybeans, how many fields did we plant on Coldstream Farm on Sunday? They weren't big fields, but yeah, we planted most of them from one seed pallet. Or not even. Since I'm aiming to plant both these fields with canola, this is probably going to need to be refilled before we're done. And I'm going to speed up time a bit, see if we can get the crop to dry out. I can always stick this on a helper if the crop dries out, then jump down to the southern field and get the harvesters moving. Well, we could be harvesting in the dark. Ooh, running out of gas in this thing as well. So I'm not sure, but it also looks like in Farm Sim 19 equipment is going to be potentially regionalised. I think they were saying, so you won't find American trucks in Europe and you won't find European trucks in America. However, tractors tend to be fairly universal, so you'll find John Deere tractors in both Europe and America. But it'd be interesting to see if the American tractors only come with the weight at the front, where European tractors come with the 3-point hitch. Because that is a typical difference. Maybe close as to whether we get this field completed with the tank load that we have. Good grief. Nearly 2 o'clock in the afternoon and the ground is still wet. Okay. This down to the end and I'm going to stick a helper on it because I'm going to need to reload the seed tank. Okay. That one. Still got 7,000 litres in here. Not enough. Oh! There's a shed there. Could put my trucks in there one day. How's he doing? 15%. I'll take over again. I need to adjust that way. Turn that on. Next turn will be an auto left turn. Lower the doodad, turn the engine, and let's drive. So the reason I came down this end is because it's going to have a lot less difficulty pulling U-turns at the end of the field as they get wider with each pass. Oh! Yay. Sun. Okay. And we'll get this turned round at the end and then we'll set the harvester running. Okay, stop there. Open the lid. Jump to the truck. 600 litres in the tender. I think I'm the only person who plays Farm Sim I've actually seen using all the wagons for this purpose. I know some people have messed around with the Horse DLC seed and fertiliser tender, but for the most part, not a popular thing. Oh, we don't have anything in there. Okay. That's sufficient. So that's the other thing we can use it for. We can refuel the tractors. Okay. So because of the way my corn supplies are looking, I'm going to fill the truck and the trailer up once each and possibly finish the row with this harvester. And then we'll forage the rest of the field. And you are full. Okay, let's move the truck out of the way. This over here for now, just in case I need to refill something on the southern field. Okay, harvester. Wow, very slow. What? It's a third of a tank and it's not reached the end yet. You could potentially be looking at halfway full. Oh, down below 100,000 money. Oh, the pipe's on the other side. Oh, that's okay. It'll be on its way back when it gets full. So the pipe will be on the right side to unload it. Hope. Nearly done. Very close. Very close. It starts down. 90% done. You go. Hey. Okay, we emptied the harvester. That's a good thing. he's got about 3 runs left. And this, you can see, is fully compacted with 931,000 litres. And there's still room for more. Oh, there's a gap in the fence. I didn't know that was there. So this here's the first field I planted, and as you can see there are trees here. We could cut them down, but they're not really big enough to make much money. Oh, harvester's back up. Too far. Okay, that's the truck full. So you think you're done? That's actually not a bad. Down, on, back up. So it's one field planted with canola, the next one should also be okay. this field. I think I'm going to finish this off and then call it a night. Call it a night, because I am getting really tired. We've had about 2 hours of streaming. Oh, there's a bit there. Look like just trees. Oh no, this bit in the middle of that tree. And this bit there. That is done. Don't need this gate open. Stop. Go back. Okay, that is done. I'm going to park him up there. Jump out and shut that gate. You're okay, you're okay. You need to go and empty a tractor, trailer, harvester, the thing with the stuff in it. And you just turn around, so you're annoying. You're going to have to drive through the crop. Okay. How is this going to work out? %, full. And we are out of corn in the harvester. This. nearly done. And we are done. Okay, turn that engine off, and I'm going to call it a night because I can barely keep my eyes open. I still have to work tomorrow. So, save yes. And I wish you all a good night, and I will be back on Thursday. Take care. Good night.